Part 2, Interspecific Interaction. So, we had seen about predation in the previous part. So, a small recap and then we will go to competition. So, tiger, deer, sparrow, seal. Okay, so these are the two types of examples, and then predators act as conduits. Conduits is like a channel for energy transfer across the trophic levels. Then prickly pear cactus introduced into Australia, and then it was got into control by the moth. And American Pacific Coast starfish disaster, when it was removed, 10 species of invertebrates became extinct because of interspecific because of they became extinct because of competition, uh, interspecific competition. Okay, let me refer it once more. So we have it over here, and they became interspecific competition. So let me write it. It's a very important word, right? Then prudent. Then insect frogs defense mechanisms. Insect frog cryptically colored monarch butterfly to bird poisonous. So and then 25% of insects are phytophagous. So they feed on plant sap. So there's a lot of things going. So there need to be defense mechanisms. So morphological is thorns, acacia, cactus. Poisonous is chemical is poisonous substances like calotropis. The cardiac glycosides, they are highly poisonous and they affect the cattle goat. So let me write highly poisonous. And then other various substances such as nicotine, morphine, quinine, opium, and strychnine. Okay, remember that. Fine, very good. So 1, 2, this is interspecific interaction. 3, defense mechanism. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, done. Now coming to the next one, competition. When Darwin spoke of the struggles for existence of survival of the fittest in nature, he was convinced that interspecific competition is a potent force in organic evolution. What is it? Interspecific competition. Here we saw about interspecific competition, right? Interspecific competition. So, it is generally believed that competition occurs when closely related species compete for the same source that are limiting for competition to occur in other species, even if resources like foods compete for this. Just a minute. So it is generally believed that competition occurs when closely related species compete for the same resources that are limiting, but it is not entirely true. So firstly, totally unrelated species could also compete for the same resources. For instance, some shallow South American lakes visiting flamingos and resident fishes compete for zooplankton in the lake. Secondly, okay, first of all, South American lake, South Pacific we saw, and then Australia we saw. South Pacific was disaster. Australia was the cactus, right? Yeah, okay, just recollecting, you have to recollect, right? So now flamingos and resident fishes, they fought for zooplankton. Now coming to the second one, resources need not be limiting for competition to occur. In interference competition, the feeding efficiency of one species might be reduced due to the interfering and inhibitory presence of the other species, even if the resources, food, and space are abundant. Therefore, competition is best defined as a process in which the fitness of one species, measured in terms of R, the intrinsic rate of increase, is significantly lower in the presence of another species. It is relatively easy to demonstrate the laboratory experiments as limited, and the competitively superior species will eventually eliminate the other species, but evident for such competent exclusion. But it is relative to demonstrate in laboratory experiment, as Gauss and other experimental ecologists did. When resources are limited, competitively superior species will eventually eliminate the other species, but evidence for such competitive exclusion occurring in nature is not always conclusive. Strong and persuasive circumstantial evidences does not, however, exist in some cases. The abundant tortoise in Galapagos Island became extinct within a decade after the goats were introduced on the island, apparently due to greater browsing efficiency of goats. Another evidence for the occurrence of competition in nature comes from what is called competitive release. A species whose, we are going to see what is competitive release. A species whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area because of the presence of a competitively superior species is found to expand its distributional range dramatically when the competitive species is experimentally removed. Connell's elegant field experiments show that on the rocky seacoast of the Scotland, the larger and competitive superior barnacle is like a whale. The kuti mean. Barnacle balanus dominates the intertidal area and excludes the smaller barnacle Chathalmus from that zone. In general, herbivores and plants appear to be more adversely affected by competition than carnivores. Gauss' competitive exclusion principle states that two relatively close species competing for the same resource cannot coexist indefinitely, and competitively inferior one will be eliminated. This may be true if the resources are limiting, but otherwise not. More recent studies do not support such gross generalization about competition, while they do not rule out the occurrence of interspecific competition in nature. They point out the species facing competition might evolve mechanisms that promote coexistence rather than exclusion. One such mechanism is resource partitioning. If two species compete for the same resource, they could avoid competition by choosing, for instance, different times of feeding or different foraging patterns. I'll come back to this word. MacArthur showed that 5 closely related species of warblers living on the same tree were able to avoid competition and coexist due to the behavioral differences in their foraging activities. Oh no. Okay, let's come back to this. Okay, so competition, we have seen about interspecific competition, and we will see about parasitisms later, and a recap of competition 2 in part 3. Thank you. And I also wanted to talk about the examples and the scientists. So flamingos, zooplankton, then Abingdon tortoise, uh, barnacle. Over here it was warblers. So these are basic ones. I have not gone in detail, and of course we learned about the competitive release. Okay, then we learned competitive exclusion principle by Gauss, and then MacArthur. He showed that five closely related species of warbler, they coexist. So these scientists, recent studies, they show that coexistence also occurs apart from competition. Thank you.